Following major tournament defeats for England, much of the blame is often projected at the fans and the media. Questions asked if the English hyped up their side a little too much. I don't believe this is the case. England do indeed have the most depth. Some would argue that England may have too much talent, and we see the signs of that with the exclusion of players like Phil Foden, who would get into any other nation's 11, and yet with England he's contending with a number of players. Firstly, I believe the reason why England failed in the Southgate was pure and simple a lack of identity that came with not knowing what his strongest team was alongside poor decision making, particularly in game. This is on Gareth Southgate. He had almost 8 years to create his own identity and gain more than enough experience. These factors cost England at a time where they had great opportunities. You question if they had a coach like Tuchel, that may have been the final piece of the puzzle. A serial winner who can make the right decisions in the big games. When it doesn't work out, your decisions are questioned, even more particularly selection choices. What we saw under Southgate's reign is a number of players left questioning their future, as we saw with Ben White, who opted to focus on Arsenal, and the bright sparks of the last Euros final, Palmer and Eze being on the bench for large spells. Following the Euro 2020 defeat to Italy, Southgate had the time to plan for Euro 2024, but we saw an even more sluggish side that still lacked the courage to win a major final. Looking back at Southgate's run, we have to go back to the 2018 World Cup in Russia. In the semi-final against Croatia, he failed to act following England losing momentum after the break. England stayed rigid in their 5-3-2, which ultimately led to the Croatian midfield overwhelming them. There were also signs of overcautiousness after going ahead following his side to invite pressure from Croatia. Fast forward to the 2020 European Championship, and arguably England's greatest opportunity as it was a home tournament. Southgate again fails to act in the final against Italy. There was a point where Italy started to work England out, and yet Southgate didn't respond. The substitutes were also too cautious, and his penalty shootout gamble failed. Outside of major tournaments, England also underperformed in the Nations League in 2022, which saw them draw 3 and lose 3, including a 4-0 home defeat to Hungary, the worst home defeat since 1928. The 2022 World Cup became another tournament where substitutions were questioned throughout the game, particularly against France, where England had them for the taking. The overall conclusion of the tournament was too defensive and once again too cautious, particularly the case against the US in the group stages. Finally, the 2024 European Championship, the squad that lacked the most structure, yet this was Southgate's fourth major tournament. There was limited cohesion, which was typically something Southgate is praised for, his ability to create a tight-knit side who get along, something England had been missing, and the thing that may claim was the downfall of the so-called golden generation. The Trent midfield gamble backfired, limited opportunities were given to Cole Palmer, who was England's spark in the final. Eze was also not fully deployed. England once again were too cautious, with a lack of pressing which was partly due to poor fitness levels. Kane had been managing a back issue that ended his club season early. He claimed to be fit, but signs of fatigue were clear. In the quarter-final versus Switzerland, Kane was subbed off in extra time in a game that looked like it was going to penalties, saying that he had cramp. Kane also mentioned after the final versus Spain that tired legs and a tired mentality made a difference. Several squad members came into the tournament already carrying knocks, or didn't have many minutes under their belt, which was also a failure on Southgate's behalf. It was a risk that was close to paying off, but there were points in the tournament where England nearly got knocked out due to this. The game against Slovenia was sluggish. Luke Shaw had a hamstring injury and that hadn't played since mid-February. Bukayo Saka had muscular problems at the end of the season. Mark Gahey had only returned from a long knee injury. John Stones had also had very limited game time at club level and also some fitness concerns. I don't think the media or fans have any part to play. They are no different when it comes to domestic football, and we don't hear the same excuses from players at their domestic clubs. Of course, it's not also fair to blame everything on Gareth Southgate. The players do have to take some responsibility. The truth is, England have always had problems with players and their antics off the field. They have always attracted negative media attention, particularly leading up to major tournaments, more so than other nations. Leading up to the Euro 2024 Championships, here are a list of all the scandals involving England players just in the last 5 years prior to the Championships. In March 2020, Jack Grealish is charged with 2 motoring offences. He broke COVID lockdown guidelines also. In March 2020, Eric Dyer climbs into the stands to confront a fan and receives a 4-match ban. In April 2020, Kyle Walker breaches COVID lockdown rule guidelines by inviting sex workers to his property. In May 2020, Kieran Trippier is charged with misconduct with alleged breaches of FA's betting rules. In September 2020, Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood breached quarantine rules by inviting girls back to their room in Iceland. In August 2020, Harry Maguire is arrested for aggravated assault, resisting arrest and repeated attempts of bribery in Greece. In July 2021, Southgate accepts mistakes were made during the Euro 2020 final penalty shootout, which also created a media circus. In January 2022, Mason Greenwood is charged with attempted. In February 2022, Jordan Pickford is involved in a mass brawl at a Tyneside pub. In November 2022, Ben White leaves the England squad after a conflict with assistant Steve Holland. In March 2023, Kyle Walker indecently exposes himself at a bar. In January 2024, Kyle Walker's list of affairs is also exposed. In March 2024, the FA and Nike meddled with the St George's flag, causing outrage. There were 6 separate scandals alone in 2020 leading up to the home championships in 2021 due to obviously COVID. I didn't hear a single person go back to the actions of various players in 2020 when looking back on the loss. The media in England might be intense at times, but the players haven't helped themselves. It might help to stay out of trouble if you don't want negative media attention, particularly in the lead up of a major tournament. As a new era begins under Thomas Tuchel, will we see more of the same? We may not find out if Tuchel does only stay in charge for one tournament. As I am speaking, England have recorded their best victory yet, beating Serbia 5-0 away from home. There are already signs of a side willing to take more risks, playing with more attacking intent, but we will have to wait until 2026 World Cup to see if it carries over. The most positive sign is that England now have a manager who picks players that fit his style. He's not pressuring himself to fit every big name into this side, something Gareth Southgate fell for. Only time will tell which way Mr Tuchel.